know that we're straying from our archetype series this week.
Right. That they're felt in need due to the intensity of the week.
Right.
Internal intensity.
And
for
while
both
it
of
may
us.
seem like New Moon in Leo would be a great time to talk about the child,
maybe when it's full moon.
she's got a moon in Virgo, and I've got a moon in Capricorn. The children don't get to be speaking right now.
Excuse me, the adults are talking.
Thank you.
Maybe you don't want to hear what the adults say.
We didn't really have childlike childhood.
No. Well, you know, when I was...
I had bits. and
Well,
pieces.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I played dolls. I played Barbies.
Mhm.
Yeah, but that was my Pisces. I created this unbelievable world with my Barbies.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I was all about doing everything I could to stay awake to hear the adults talk.
Yes.
Because I needed to hear what they were saying. Because they were adults.
It was just fascinating to me.
Absolutely.
Their stories were fascinating. Most of the time I'd get run out of the room when they realized I was there listening.
Well, I remember laying in bed and my parents, and this is when I was much younger, my parents would play cards with extended family. That was a thing, right? And I'd be laying in the guest bed at my grandparents' house, and I remember focusing so I could hear every single word.
Yeah, see, I'd get out of bed and go sneak and lay down flat in the hallway.
There you go. I do
And until
remember a couple of times.
Until somebody could go to the bathroom, and then you're scrambling to get back to the room and be hoping it's one of your uncles that they would just wink at you and not get in trouble.
The aunt that really liked you.
Right, exactly. But not your mom or dad, because then you were
'cause
toast.
Then you're in trouble.
Oh, that
Absolutely.
is so funny.
Yeah.
But yes, that's so true. And listening just to, hear what they're... I don't know, for me it was just, I just like to hear the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew a lot of history about my family. But nobody cares about it now, so it's like... Do I know about us? No, not really. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Then I will tell you.
Right. And we used to, I'm sure your people did too, get together to visit, and they just sit there and talk about old times and talk about old dead people and sometimes their childhood, but not too much. My family, they were drinkers, so it was always stories about the time that they closed the bar in Maryland and they all got arrested, or the time they all,
Yeah, I don't remember those being part of our stories. But they did drink while they were talking and playing cards, right? And everything, I think all of them smoked.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So now we're talking about the 70s, and
Absolutely.
everyone freaking smoked. They sat in the kitchen.
Smoked, drank their Pepsis, drank their beers, their Miller Lite, or their Coors, or their Budweiser. Yes.
I think my family were mixed drinks.
Mixed drinks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I remember correctly. But don't quote me on
Right.
that. So.
It's possible, though. There were a lot of mixed drinks. Like, I remember being in school and getting in trouble one time because I had offered up a name for this little mascot that we had up on the board that we created, that the teacher, we were doing something with it, and she was like, well, what shall we name him? And I said, Harvey Wallbanger. And that was his fucking name for that year, too. The teacher about pissed herself. I didn't understand why, but I heard it all the time.
Right.
So
what's the problem? It's a name.
It's a name.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
That is amazing.
Only for me.
That is amazing.
I'm sure my mother got a call about that one.
Let's call him Harvey Wallbanger.
Right?
Oh my goodness.
Okay. It's a little thing. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Good day to you. I'm trying to come up with a new way to introduce ourselves.
Sonya came up with good day, good people.
Or good day, good life.
We're still playing.
And we're still playing with that. But we say good day, good people. Hope you're having a good life.
Absolutely.
Welcome to In My Experience. We're going to stray a little bit today from our archetype series that we've been on for the last few weeks because we're going to talk about our experiences this past week. We're coming up on, well, by the time you guys listen, this will be outside of the new moon in Leo and the 8-8 Lion's Gate. But the energy feels interesting.
Personally, for me, there has been a shift. Now, that, of course, could mean that I'm seeing the world differently, right? Or it could also mean that the world has shifted and there is more intolerance.
Oh, well, yeah, things are coming to loggerheads, that's for sure.
Right.
And because I want to have a great life experience, I'm getting information presented to me through all the interesting and various ways that I get information that is saying everything is okay, really. This is all just an experience. Like I really had a good long conversation yesterday while I was watching some boring TV show about how it's just an experience. And if we can really wrap our minds, if I can really wrap my mind around the fact that this is just an experience, then the detachment that comes from this isn't my life, this isn't my death, right? This isn't going to be always or never, that there isn't, it's not static, right? Then I can release and relax a little bit and sort of go with the flow of it, whatever it is.
Right. Well, there's much less need to judge.
Yes.
And label. It was interesting a couple of weeks ago, and this is specifically regarding my son and the few challenges we've been having recently with his surgery and the hospitalization. He had his tonsils and adenoids removed, and his not understanding
Right.
what is going on in his body and the pain that he's feeling and the resulting anxiety that he's been experiencing. And he's also, when he gets tired, he hits overtired really easily and then refuses sleep until he literally falls over.
Right.
And and that was cute through the toddler years maybe, but now we're hitting 11 and
Not so cute.
it's getting harder for both of us.
Right.
It's obviously getting harder for him because he's still tired. It's getting harder for me, I think, just because it begins to wear on you not sleeping.
Sure. And sometimes the stimulation can be overstimulation all the time.
Right, absolutely. So I'm taking steps, to shift things and change things in our life to try to support him in feeling less anxious and helping him to understand and so on and so forth. But one night I was sitting there with him as he was refusing to go to sleep, and I started crying, just as, I don't know about you, but I do. You hit a level of exhaustion and it's just, you're just crying.
Yeah.
That's what happens
It's
to me.
just a release. Just gotta release
Absolutely.
some of those feelings.
Absolutely. I've done all the laughing I could, and I still
And you're
needed-
not big on yelling.
No. So I had to just sit there and cry. And the feeling came over me, and it was a similar thing. It was like, sweetheart, this is just an experience. This is just an experience that both of you are having. You don't have to label it. It doesn't have to be good or bad. It is just a thing that is right now. And yes, I could sit there and say, well, it's been right now for a long time. And I would probably be true, or that would be true. But the sense of it was different for me. And the sense of it, once I embraced the thought, right? I'm like, okay, well, Because when I'm feeling this way, I'm like, I will grasp onto anything to try to revisualize what is occurring in my life.
Sure.
And so once I said, okay, then let's just sit with this. And the tears dried, and this overwhelming sense of love and compassion and gratitude swept over me in the understanding that this was just an experience.
Right.
This isn't your life per se.
Yeah.
Right?
Or your death.
Right. Well, yeah. A couple
'Cause
of times I felt really close to death.
Right? So he's like, this is going to kill me,
Uh-huh.
right? I mean, we say these things and we mean them metaphorically, but
Right.
they stem from some trigger within our body or our mind that's
Yes.
going, danger, Will Robinson, right?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I it was an amazing experience that reaching that point. So I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
There was a great article that a friend sent to me, and it was talking about the Lamas that just recently passed, and not to go too much into it, but basically it is about the harvest. It's a pagan celebration, and the corn king and all of that, and about releasing and letting go and cutting ties and things like that. And that is another way of looking at the experience of this energy. So it's like, okay, if this isn't just happening to me personally, if I'm not in a vacuum, maybe there's something. In fact, my husband is so, God love him, he's coming out of the spiritual witness protection program, and he's beginning to ask questions. And so yesterday, one of his questions to me, because we both weren't feeling that great, was he's like, is there something going on in the collective? And I was just like, who are you? And then,
because did those words just come out of your mouth?
I know. But we've talked about Schumann's resonance. I've shown him some things, from NOAA and NASA's website and stuff like that. And he believes in solar flares now. I mean, if the tides can have an effect, why can not the planets?
Well, and our physical bodies.
And our physical body. Well, and everything that's on the planet, right?
Right.
So whether it's magnetic, electronic, plasmic, it doesn't matter, right? Radio, nuclear, all of those things. And so there is this energy that's there that is allowing for this release. Now, we're not, farmers anymore. We don't live the sort of lifestyles that maybe our grandparents did. And in the opening, I'll decide we might keep that in, we were talking about some memories and listening to our elders talk about things and wanting to stay up at night and try to, listen as intently as you could to hear them tell their stories as they were playing cards and drinking their Harvey Wallbangers and whatever. We were children of the 70s for sure. But being fascinated, like I think you said that you needed to hear the adult stories.
Right.
And I just found them completely
driven.
Fascinated by them. They were just so interesting. And that continued on for me into high school, going out with church groups, and we would go visit in... we called them active adult centers back then. They were called senior centers. And everybody kind of dreaded it because, it kind of smelled, but, that set me up for my career in hospitals. And that's C. diff, by the way, if you wonder what that god-awful smell is in the nursing homes. And I loved it. I loved going because I knew that I was going to chat with someone that was going to just fill me with the history of their life. For example, I had a gal that did genealogy, and she asked me my last name, and she told me so much about the Floyds. I was gobsmacked.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of things that, I enjoy. I like to know the oral history. I like to know about traditions and things. And while I don't believe that we must maintain the traditions at all costs, I do think it's important to know these things. For me. Just for me. One of the other things this week that I thought was really pressing and telling with that energy of, because we're coming into the new moon in Leo, we're coming into the Lion's Gate, Leo is the child, so it might be an opportunity for us to look at our childhood, to look at our past, to look at how we raised our children if we were parents, and to not so much judge it, But for me personally, where I found judgment, I found an opportunity to examine and release that judgment, to give myself some grace, to not be in such an epic battle with my own life.
Yeah.
Because it's just an experience.
Right.
Right? And the great thing about going back and looking over experiences is you can see all the times in the past where you overcame insurmountable things.
Right.
Right? Through strength, through courage. And that is also the big Leo theme, right? The strength card in the tarot has got a lion on it.
Right.
Right? So the other thing that I wanted to share today that we talked about is, you know, how do you work through those processes? How do you recognize when you're just, you know, getting messages, and how does that happen for you? How does that happen for me? And am I paying attention? Is anyone paying attention right now? Because right now I don't feel like anyone is really paying attention to what's coming out of their mouths.
I think that a part of this impetus for this conversation was a TikTok that I saw that led to a book.
Yes, it did.
That Sonya bought. I have not bought yet, but I will be doing that after this recording and reading it. And it's basically talking about truth.
Yes.
And what I found most interesting in just our short conversation and perusing the book is that, and Sonya shared it, is that truth resonates at an energy. And if you know yourself, you know your body, you know your life, you know when you have heard, when you hear truth.
Right.
You know when you say truth. As I say this, I get goosebumps.
Right.
Right? So
there's
that's
a physical tell.
Right. There's something within you. It catches in your throat. You feel it in your belly, whatever it is. So, but there are actually different levels of truth as opposed to different levels of falsehoods, according to the theory of this book, which I find interesting.
Right. And the book, just so that you know, is called Truth versus Falsehood, How to Tell the Difference, and it's by David Hawkins. And years ago, I read his book, Power versus Force, which was incredibly fascinating to me at the early start of my spiritual commitment. Spiritually aware from birth, but spiritually committed from about 2009, 2008. So anyway, that book was what I needed then.
Yeah.
This book, I'm thinking, is where I'm at now. And there's a map of consciousness, and that was what was referenced in this TikTok. And we'll put the links to these things so that you can check them out yourself. And I shared the TikTok with several other people, and everybody just came back. This is the best thing that I have heard all day, all week, all my life.
Right.
It was really just very short, but incredibly profound. And they talked about and we see this a lot, and I just love how truths are true in any example, any environment, any situation, right? A truth is replicable, right? A falsehood requires constant feeding, right? And so the 15% of the spiritually awake are sort of carrying the 85% of those that are still in, we'll call it, metamorphosis. And that makes me think about the 80-20 rule in work, right?
Right.
20% of the people do 80% of the work. Right? And
Well, just about everything.
Everything.
80-20 seems to be some...
It is absolutely.
It's a magical separation
right.
of energy.
And because of that, I wanted to talk about this today so that I can get that other 5% to come on along. So
Come
we can
join us.
make
Come
this
join us.
80-20 as is perfect in nature. And if you know anything about things like Fibonacci sequence, and were you going there, right? And and then even like I know when I was teaching people on how to grow their real estate business, one of the things in their databases, and one of the things we talked about, so there's the magic of the number 7 and how that works. And again, you can Google and research about that. But this is why telephone numbers have 7 digits. The mind can remember that, right? And then there is another stop point at 49 and then 256. And so what I would say to my agents is go out and find 7 of the people that you know absolutely adore you and ask them if they would be willing to reach out to 7 people that they know to support you in the growth of your business. And if you can start with that 7 and you get them to do it, by the time it's done and then that 7 gets another 7, you can actually grow your database to 2. So you know through those 7 people, 256 people that can hear about you and your business. And know that you're a real estate agent. And that is like the power of numbers, right? You don't have to do this all by yourself, which was another conversation we had this morning. So, again, the whole point was help people to yourselves to hear our stories and see, hey, that might be me. I might resemble that. And also just to, share with you, this is how it works with our spiritual connectedness.
Right.
It's not always sit down, go into a meditation with a pad and paper next to you, and then you're going to get messages and you're going to write them down. Oftentimes, all that does for me is just settle me, calm me, ground me, and then I'll get up and go about my way, and then it's like message, right? Because and what I realized this week is that I am always connected.
Right.
So I don't have to, although I'm sure they appreciate it when I do, I don't have to sit down and commit to a meditation today. I get it. They appreciate it if I would. I'm just saying, I recognize, though, rather than beating myself up because I have to hit the floor running in the morning, that I am still connected. I've done the work. I can pay attention to the signs, the symbols, and the absolute grab me by the top of my head and point it in the right direction that my team of energies work with me
Right.
for this experience.
Right.
I'm going to stop now.
So that brings the conversation to how do you know what is truth? How do you know based off of messages? My experience is very similar to Sonia's right now.
You might have heard us mention that once or twice before.
In that, I get information all the time.
Right.
I'm connected. If I sit to work with a client, it's just always, it's just, okay, let's do this. And it comes in. So it's a conscious choice. It's a conscious decision. Meditation for me is actually a way to relax.
I agree.
And that's why I need it.
Yes.
Because of my world as it is now. That gives me an opportunity just to relax and float.
Sure.
Which is
what do they say?
I do mentally.
30-minute meditation is equal to 8 hours of sleep or something?
I don't think it's that much, but
is
yeah.
It 4 hours? I don't know.
Well,
something.
hypno session, and then yoga nidra was higher than that.
Oh.
Doing a session of yoga nidra, which is usually a half hour, maybe 45 minutes.
Right.
But so that's my utilization of it. But yeah, how do we know what's true or not true? And how do you know what's true or not true? That's part of this process as we all continue to evolve and raise our consciousness, our ability to discern truth or untruth.
Yes, I'm going to ask that whoever's in this room to please bring some cool air. Because it's so hot in this recording studio right now. I am absolutely on the verge of stripping naked. I cannot even. It must be good information because I'm feeling like I'm at a Megadeth concert in the pit right now. I'm just dripping.
It's so funny. You've got 2 women in various stages of menopause, and we sit down together, and it just always gets hot.
It gets so. We've had people come into this space after we left and been like, "What is going? What is like? It's like a sauna in there." And I heard something
Building
this
up
week.
the energy.
And I actually heard something this week that said that when, some people will say, well, when ghosts come by, things get cold. But when spirit comes by, things heat up.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, Lord, isn't that the truth? Because, whoo, I start working and I start sweating.
Yes.
It's just the way that it is with me.
Yes.
And it's that fire, again, that fire energy. We are in the fire energy now. So that's one way that I know my people are nearby.
Because it gets
Because
hot.
things start heating up. Because I tend to run cold all the time.
Right.
And I know the difference between this heating up and a hot flash.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Okay, so before y'all go, well, you're menopausal, so it could just be a hot flash. No.
We do have those too.
Oh, yes.
Those
and
do
they
occur,
are
too.
different.
They are different.
So
Yes. No, this is just, yeah,
this is just, the flame of truth.
the flame of truth. So there you go.
Versus the
flame
cold
of truth.
darkness of the falsehood.
Well, there is a lot of, ding, cold, dark falsehood. There is a lot of people right now trying to decide what is true and what is not true, right? And this has been going on for a while.
Oh, yeah.
This has been going on for a while. But yeah, and the Lion's Gate is like an opening of truth.
It is.
It's
100%.
it's like an opening of truth. So if you are sitting in a place, and it was just a couple of months ago for those who have listened to our podcast, where you might have heard, well, you would have heard me said if you were listening, I'm having an identity crisis.
Yes.
Right? The identity crisis is gone. I'm not saying that I know the answers to everything, but I can tell you that wandering around in the desert for 40 days, 40 years, 40 months, whatever it is, day and night, has disappeared. And I'm sitting in a place where I am dancing with truth.
Oh, I love that.
And
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And there was a real shedding. And as I was going through the process, I was very surprised. But there was a real shedding of old ideas that, for the most part, I think just lived within me.
Right.
And for me to become the experience that I desire to have, that shedding had to occur.
Right. You have to be willing to allow yourself to believe it differently.
Mm-hmm. It was, and it's so interesting. I just said this to someone, and I brought me back to the thought of how I experienced the death of my son. And I'm going to talk about just one specific thing, and I may have mentioned it before, but you're going to hear the story again. That at about 2 years out, one of the thoughts that went through my head repeatedly was there should be two. Because I had identical twin boys, and 11 days after birth, one of my sons, Eli, died. And so that was just a thought, right? Just a thought. It was a powerful thought, and it was killing me from the inside out. Now, it was true. Right? On some level, there was truth to it. There were two. I had two babies that I was developing and growing and gave birth to, and then I didn't.
Correct.
So it was a truth. It was absolutely a truth. But it was a truth that I embraced to believe and taken it internally, and it was causing me great harm. I began to realize about 2 or 3 years later that it was causing me great harm and would take me back into a place of trauma every time I thought it.
Right.
And I thought of it every day.
Right.
So I made the decision, I'm willing to let go of the belief that there should be two, so that I could embrace what was present now here, right? Thinking about what should have been will always bring pain. I'm
Thinking
checking to
about-
see if that's right. And that they're like, yeah, that's
No, that's
basically
100%,
right.
yeah.
Right. So, yeah, see how they're like, you said always, let's talk about that. You said never, let's talk about that to make sure that you're correct on that. So, I was experiencing that pain, and it was a choice that I had to make to stop that. And I did. After 6 weeks, through hard work and intention, it literally just vanished like an imaginary thing does. And I was in the reality. And even though it might sound that the reality would be more painful, it was not. There was such a sense of relief and gratitude.
Right.
And so I was dealing with a truth. And I made the conscious decision to decide that I wanted a different truth.
Absolutely.
A bigger truth.
Absolutely.
A truthier truth.
Right.
And so I took the steps to do that.
Yeah.
And it was a huge piece of my healing.
Right. It was not spiritual bypassing.
No,
By any
not at all.
realm. So for, anyone that might think, well, sometimes we make decisions to deal with something in a different manner, and sometimes we can make that decision because we can't bear the pain, and sometimes we make that decision because we make the incredibly brave and courageous choice to walk through that fire,
right,
to get to the other side.
Yeah, no, there was absolutely no spiritual bypassing. It was literally, I need to stop thinking this,
Right.
because it's killing me.
Because suffering creates more suffering.
Right. I was choosing to suffer in that case. And so moving on to the place of it was no longer my big truth. I now had a bigger truth that I could live was healing.
Absolutely.
It was a healing piece for me. And so how much of the truth that you think you have to believe is nothing more than what you choose to believe.
Right. It's just
And
the experience.
There's another truth out there
Absolutely.
that you can choose.
A truthier truth.
Yeah, that's right. A truth with a bigger capital T.
Yeah, and there can be a lot of this. And there's a lot of truth that comes through awareness.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Right?
How
Yes.
old, I love that expression. How old were you when you realized this? I was these many years old. I was today old.
I was today old. Yes,
I was today
I
old.
love that.
I do too.
I
Because
love
it's
that. You're like,
that's
how?
such a truth.
How?
That's
Yes.
it. Yeah, that is a truth statement right there.
Mhm.
Because again, as lifelong learners, we know that there's always, and we don't use that word often, but there
No.
is always an opportunity to learn something new
Right.
about yourself, about another, a situation.
About what you believe.
Right. And it takes courage and motivation to do that.
Well-
Personally, myself, I think the lazy mind is the mind that doesn't want to continue to seek the truth.
Well, because it's a tearing down of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
In some form or fashion, it's a tearing down of yourself because you are, as you are in this moment, as I am in this moment, nothing more than what I believe
Right.
to be true of my life.
Right.
And so if I stop believing that something is true or change my focus to another truth, then I have to give up
Right.
parts of myself to do that. And it's interesting. I mean, I've done this all of my life. I can point to times in my life where I'm like, I remade myself then. I remade myself then. And it's always been conscious.
Right.
I'm like, oh, well, I'm moving towards that, so I need to shift this within me to get to that. This time, it wasn't, I knew it was occurring, but I don't have the thing that I'm moving to.
Yeah.
And I think that was the shift for me. That is not being shown to me at this point.
Right.
Or I'm not in full awareness of it, but I know that that's where I'm going, and I know it's where I want to be.
And that's where faith comes in.
True. Absolutely.
We had a conversation last week before we started the show where we disagreed on a stance on something. I'm not going to go into what it was.
Oh, yes,
But we had a disagreement.
And I was like, nope,
And
not
she's
at
like,
all.
no, I'm not good. I can't go there.
Right.
And she had her own very legitimate reasons. I was losing my mind because I was in a fear state.
Mm-hmm.
So I went away and I looked at that and I sat with it a little longer. And what I came to realize, again, because this is how I live my life, that it wasn't that I was afraid. It was that I couldn't control it.
Yes, absolutely.
And the control created the fear, which created the resistance and the forced, it must be like this. And she's like, I can't get behind that. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. She's like, no, I do understand. I can't get behind it. And here's why. And so it really was such a beautiful, and I want to thank her for this. This is why I'm bringing it up now, because it was such a beautiful moment for me to see where I'm generally pretty unbiased, right? I'm a diamond turner. And I can still get caught in my justice trap, in my bias, in my rigidness about and it's myopia because I'm only looking at it from my perspective.
Right.
And so, that was really what started the chain of events of the breadcrumbs that I followed all week long to get us to this podcast today.
Dun, 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 dun.
Ching.
Ding.
So I want to share something really quick that I was looking at this book, Hiring the Heavens, and there was this great little section that I opened right up to, and Hiring of the Heavens is by Jean Slatter. It's a great little book.
And it is little.
Little, yeah.
Yes.
But she talks about how spirit talks to you. And she says, you'll know in many ways. Most commonly, you'll notice that life just seems to work out, where previously it was difficult. Things start falling into place seemingly miraculously. Details get ironed out, and monumental tasks come together more smoothly and easily than you could have imagined. Somehow you end up doing the right thing at just the right time. Now, and then she goes on to say, oftentimes my answers come in the form of messages from other people. And like we were saying today, for me, my messages come in books, they come in movies, they come in songs, they come in art. They literally will use anything that is handy. My people are MacGyver.
I often say that spirit is opportunistic.
As hell.
Whatever you listen to, whatever you do, wherever you look, you will see.
Right. Yeah. There's no getting. And I think
if you just have to pay attention.
And I think when you see this happen in movies, like you'll see that movie, like Christine is one that makes me think about it, right? The movie, Stephen King movie about the car. And the car talked to him through the music on the radio.
Oh.
Right?
I never saw it.
Oh, it's great. It's terrifying, but it's great. But, like there was one, they were trying to break into the car to damage it, and he's banging, and all of a sudden the car's singing, you keep on knocking, but you can't come in. And it's just brilliant, right?
Oh, my goodness.
And that's the way and I'm thinking, and as I'm watching this, I'm thinking to myself, that person listens to spirit. Because they have a deep understanding that there's a myriad of ways that you can convey a message, right? And so that was one of her things that she was sharing here. And the reason that I shared that with you is because it makes me think about when we are having difficulties, when I'm having difficulties, it's so easy. And in the past, and I'm talking just really recently, like 2020, like the rest of you, there were still things that could trigger me. There are still things that could make me go down the path of despair and destruction. I have a Capricorn moon. Worry is, and then with the Cancer rising, I'm quick to react to shit.
Yeah.
So,
all emotion.
and then Pisces is just feeling it all. So anyway, the big
I don't know
three,
which way to swim.
right?
I don't know which way
big
to swim.
three keep my waters churning. There are no
Yeah.
stagnant waters inside me.
No.
And sometimes I want stagnant waters. Sometimes I just want the water to just be still and clear. I want to be able to see my reflection. And then they say, yeah, but you'd get bored.
Well, and that's what Yoga Nidra, right? That's what I do. I go visit it for 30 minutes, and then I'm like, all right, I'm good.
Right.
I'm good. I got into the quiet water. It was lovely.
It was lovely.
And now it's time to move on.
But you can't live in quiet waters. Your skin prunes. It's not good. Knowing this for myself, having this knowledge allows for me to consciously choose to go down the path of despair or to shift, get off that exit, and get on to happy trails.
See, and I think that, I mean, that's beautiful. I think the very, very key to that is knowing yourself.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have to know your process to getting to something.
Yes.
Whatever it is. And there's no wrong about it. Now, you can look at your process and you can say, maybe I'm going to choose a different process. Like for me personally, let's talk about astrology. I have my moon is in Virgo, and it is conjunct Uranus and Pluto in Virgo. So they're right there in a little clump all on top of each other. So sometimes my changes, my shifts are radical, insane, out of nowhere. You're like, boom.
Possibly dark.
Everyone's like,
maybe.
What
Right.
happened?
Definitely transformative.
Or sometimes I cling to something so hard that it takes, Spirit takes a 2x4. No, mech truck, no, like a bullet train in Japan.
She got the Kung Fu death grip.
And I'm going, I am not changing. And they're like, yes, you are. And so,
I totally just saw that right there. Anyway.
And so that, for me personally, I'm like, you know what? I want to try to move away from the fuck you, I'm never changing stance, because I find that more challenging.
You ever look at yourself and go, God, I got to get away from this crazy bitch?
Right.
And then you realize, oh, wait, that's me.
That's me.
I'm the crazy bitch.
I can't just cross the street and walk away from crazy because I carry it. Yeah. So knowing your process is amazing. So just like Sonya has the realization that she doesn't have to go down the road of despair, or maybe doesn't have to go down for it as long.
Right.
Whatever the awareness is.
Sure.
Mine is, you know what? Maybe let go of the death trip or death's grip of never having to transform. Because, I mean, it's also conjunct, so it's what I live for.
Right.
It's the part of my beingness so intimately woven into my experience of life, and yet times I still fight.
Oh, yeah.
So absolutely knowing what your process is. Your process may be very different, maybe it's similar, but understanding how that plays a role in your life, and then deciding if you're good with it.
Yeah.
And if you want to make any changes in
Yeah.
it. And there's no wrong.
It makes me think about the Olympics that there are wrapping up this week. And yesterday I happened to catch the long distance marathon runner, the women's marathon. And there were the top winning, I think, Kenyan, and her running mate, and then behind her was the USA, Molly, I can't remember her last name. Anyway, I was doing other things and it was just in the background. But eventually I did turn and pay attention in the last 2 miles of the race, and you might be able to find clips of it, because there was an amazing metaphor there that is directly related to this. And it was that they were talking about how these runners were mentally preparing themselves. And this has been one of the big issues about the games in Tokyo. There's been a lot of talk about how the weather is not at all like they described it to be. And honestly, it was like, 79 degrees or something, but it was like 97% humidity. And if you've ever been in a 79 degrees feels like 110 day in Phoenix. Okay. Except that you can't breathe because it's not an oven, it's a sauna.
Right.
And these, and they're running through the streets of Tokyo, and they're just like trying to catch any little bit of shade. And how they were stretched out and how they all sort of separated throughout the course of the race was a big topic of the conversation. But the USA managed to actually outrun one of the Kenyan runners, and she took silver. Now, she was happy. Her goal in her mind was to stay with those two ladies, because they're always at the front of the pack,
Right.
and just get a medal. She just wanted to medal. And as they got into the last quarter mile, the two Kenyans began to sort of jockey, and one passed the other. And when she did it, mentally, I think, from what I saw, it did something to the other runner, who had been the lead through the entire race. And in that, she faltered ever so slightly. But it was a mental falter,
Right.
which allowed for Molly to recognize and just push with everything that she had to get past her, to beat her, and to get the silver. And they kept talking about the mental mindset. One of the announcers was also a marathon runner, and she was actually talking about the things that you say to yourself, the distractions that you give to yourself in your mind, to just keep pushing, to keep going, to not give up that edge. And it is effort. It takes training. It takes strength. It takes endurance. It takes tenacity. All of those things. And the same is true with our spiritual practices.
Right.
When I got stung by the scorpion a couple of weeks ago, I have a high tolerance for pain. And I suffered and endured that pain all afternoon and into the evening. And by 10 o'clock at night, when it was time for bed, I don't know that it was getting more uncomfortable. I actually think because I was getting tired, my ability to endure that pain was lessening.
Yes.
And so then it became more frantic for me. And I literally got to a point where I was like, I don't think I can take any more of this. Right?
Yeah.
Said the same thing when I was giving birth.
And yet she did.
And I
give
did.
birth.
And it ended. And that's the thing about just having the experience. The whole point of what I'm saying is that was an experience for those runners. This was an experience for me by getting stung by a scorpion or having it. But in the moment, I didn't know. They knew when they were getting close. In fact, one of the announcers talked about that. She said, when I got to the 400-meter mark, she's like, my mind shifted because I knew I only had that much farther to go. Think about when you go on a trip and you come home and you come down the mountain and you see the lights of the town that you live in, and then your body, horses, we used to take the horses out, and as soon as they knew we were heading back, those nags would run like the wind because they knew they were heading back to the barn, right? So sometimes we just have to force ourselves to just be with the experience that we're in and know that it will end. And if you can mentally prepare yourself for that, then you can transcend it. And it doesn't matter what it is.
Right. And it takes practice.
Oh, gosh.
And the thing is, once you have reached a level of practice where you're able to transcend one, then there is another opportunity to practice.
Oh, yeah. Because I was terrified that I was not going to be able to endure the pain of that scorpion sting any longer. The fact that it had gone on longer than what I thought was reasonably acceptable. In my mind, I had an idea of how long this was going to be discomfort, and then it would lessen. Even though everything I read said, looking for this bitch to stay here for 48 hours.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, but it can't be that bad for that long. No, I'm struggling. I got stung by a yellow jacket on the inner arm, and it was like 20 minutes in a Benadryl, and I was fine. No, Miss Sonya Lee. We got a little something for you, because I'm still questioning why this had to happen at all. And it's continual process of awareness, right? Of the experience that I got to experience. And I'm grateful for the experience. Because what it allowed for me to see was that there is a point for me. Like, I often joke, like, I could probably withstand torture for a while. I know I have in the past, you know. I've died because I wouldn't give up the secrets through these lips, right? And knowing that doesn't necessarily mean that you can do it the next time it occurs.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? You see this all the time. People have a broken heart. I'm never going to fall in love again. And then they fall in love again. And then they're like, don't mess me up because it'll kill me if you, like, I've actually heard people say that. I was so afraid to get involved with someone again because I knew that if it didn't work out, it would kill me. How do you know that?
Right. You know, it's so interesting. As I was driving here, I read something, and I honestly don't even, I didn't read, I heard it. I'm sorry. And because I was driving, I was not reading. Just for those of you who are like, what the hell? No, honestly, I heard it.
She's such a multitasker, you don't even know.
So anyway, I don't know who this woman is. I think she might be an athlete that was talking, but I honestly don't know. She was some blonde woman. Anyway, she was saying how when she is pushing herself, she used to call it the pain cave. She's like, and all I wanted to do when I got into the pain cave was, or I wanted to not to go to the pain cave, and if I did, all I wanted to do was get out.
Yeah.
She's like, now I'm in a place where I look to go to the pain cave.
Wow.
Because then I know that is where my opportunity is to transcend, to grow, to understand. And it's just, isn't that interesting?
Oh, that gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, it was like a 30-second clip I heard. And I was like, that's interesting. But that is also, I mean, that is transcending.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we don't want to run into, say, abusive situations or that type of thing. That's not what we're talking about.
Or the burning building, unless you're a firefighter.
Right. What we're talking about is it doesn't matter where you live or how you live. There is, like Sonya and her Scorpion. Sorry, Scorpios. Her Scorpion.
I'm looking for a Scorpio to blame. Anyway.
It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter what type of life you have. There is opportunity to grow, to push yourself, to expand your awarenesses wherever you are, whatever you're doing. There are some that are naturally built in to our life in general.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter if you live in a high rise in Manhattan or if you live in a trailer in Tennessee.
It's true. However, I will add, and I think this is important because it is about speaking to this mindset or this strength, because I struggle to give the mind all the credit. Billionaires. I was watching this story about billionaires, the super wealthy, and their wealth affords them the luxury of not having to be around anyone except other wealthy people.
This is true.
And part of it is because how do you relate to somebody when you make $17,000 an hour?
A minute.
Like the Walmart, family. How do you relate to your $17 an hour employees? Right? So, and generally speaking, and I'm not saying that money makes you happy. Success does. Success can bring happiness.
Money makes life easier.
Money can make life easier or not, depending on if you're a lottery winner. But my point was just that when you get yourself into a state of being where you feel better, then you can be better, you can do better, you can have better, you can see better. All of that because you have that space of beingness. And so this is like the positive thinking, the positive affirmations, the being the optimist, right? And I don't always buy into that. I don't think if you just have a sunny outlook on life, then life is going to be sunny.
No.
However, I do believe that overall, maybe not in the moment, maybe not in the experience, but your overall beingness of satisfaction is going to bring you satisfaction versus your overall beingness of suffering is going to bring you suffering.
Right.
It's the experience you choose to have.
Right.
There's no judgment in that at all.
No.
It is merely my awareness for myself. If I can choose to be not suffering. The word just went out of my...
Successful.
Thank you.
If I can choose to not suffer.
Not suffer. And maybe that's exactly what I needed to say.
Right.
Then I can be more I can be happier. I can be satisfied.
Right.
Thank you, Spirit.
Well, I mean, and I can sit there with that, and I earlier talked about a specific time of suffering in my life, and it was suffering, and it was appropriate for where I was, for what I needed to do. There was this explanation that I read somewhere, and I think that it's valid for anyone who has a human experience, which would be all of us. FYI.
Just saying.
That sometimes there are such big shifts, transformations, losses, whatever, that are so big to us that it takes time for us to work through them. And that is a valid thing.
Absolutely.
And so in that period of time, it is my belief that it was appropriate for me to experience what I experienced until I was at a state where it was no longer what I wished to experience.
Yeah.
So there is absolutely, from me or Sonya, no judgment for being in that space. It is what you need to do for your time in life, and it is appropriate for you.
Yep.
And when it is no longer, then that is where the work to come out of it comes from.
Sure. And I would offer, but if you're questioning why me, now might be that might be an indicator that you're ready to start thinking about the possibility of maybe working on the letting go of the suffering.
Of being somewhere different.
To be somewhere different.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying maybe
No.
it's possible.
The only person that knows that is you.
You. And you've got to know you.
And there is change and a sense of loss too. There are things that you have to give up to not remain in suffering anymore.
Sure.
It's a real thing.
What did Einstein say? You can't solve the problem in the same environment in which it was created.
Right.
There's that.
Right. And so that is a whole experience and a whole process to go through.
And it's not a bad thing.
No, it's just
I mean, some people might be looking at this going, gosh, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't know I want to do all that. Yeah, but you're living your life anyway. You're already wet. You're already in the water.
You're already here.
You're already here.
Absolutely.
You're already here. Listen. Seriously. Just, be. If the end goal is to just be, what does just being look like for you?
And if you're not happy with what your being is, then there is an opportunity. Of course, you don't have to take it.
No.
You don't have to do anything. It's your choice.
Except grow old and die.
Well, pay taxes
or
and
just
die.
die. Pay taxes and die. Right.
That's what they say.
That's true.
But yeah, so there is no requirement that you do it, other than you decide that you no longer want to be there or be that way. That's it.
Yep. And for me, in my experience, I came here to ascend as quickly as possible, whatever the hell that means. That's what I was told. Okay. I felt it as a truth, but I still don't quite know what that looks like.
I hear ya.
And so as such, the things that I have done in the past have allowed for me to have shortcuts now, right?
Right.
Like my husband will laugh at me sometimes because we'll do the dinner dishes and he'll come in and I'll have like most of them done. And he's like, why you got to be so fast? Maybe because I've been washing dishes since I was 3 years old.
Why you got to be so fast?
I don't even think about how fast or slow. I'm just doing the dishes. Right? And so the same with my spiritual practice, right? I don't have to, and I'm sure you would say the same thing for you. That period of what you went through, and again, it can be circumstantial too, right? I could have something that comes up that maybe I don't have any past experience or current tools that are going to help me to see it, identify it, and move through it at a pace that I want to. Right? Maybe sometimes I just have to sit there with it until I figure out what the hell's going on, and then I can find the tools or whatever to move through it. But I can see and recognize that my ability to shift today from, oh, say, I don't know, 1997
Right.
is hugely different.
Yeah.
And it's because of all the work that I've done in between
Right.
those two time spaces.
Absolutely. That's a reality.
And so when I choose to allow myself to experience something differently than I have before, it's a snowflake. No two are alike.
Right.
So that's why we say no, always, and never, because there's yes and not yes.
Yes,
To
absolutely.
quote David Hawkins.
To quote the book that we were talking about
There's
earlier.
yes and not yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, to me, is what keeps me moving forward.
Yeah.
You know, I've often said that if there is no hope, if this life is meant to just be miserable, then just put me out of my misery right now.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to do it. But if I know that I can go through the valleys and the peaks, and there's always going to be valleys and peaks, right? So that, again, we'll use the always. It's not a straight line. It's not flat land.
Right.
It's not always going up a mountain. It's not always cruising down one,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just whatever the experience is and however I choose to enjoy or endure the experience at the moment.
Right.
And sometimes the enduring is more enjoyable than the enjoying. And so I'm not working so hard to deal with the troublesome issues as I am to allow the beneficial, the enjoyable ones. Because I spent so much time over here that I kind of forgot over here. And so now the work is shifting.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that's the case for you too. I don't have to look for fires to put out anymore.
No, I made a career of that.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I can trust that there's a fire department that can take care of that for me.
Right.
Or maybe just that I've created and cleared all the brush around my home so I don't have to worry about a fire. Maybe that's it.
Maybe that's it too.
I don't know. I'm still figuring all of this out. I just think that for me, the experience right now is where I can best be.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably all we can ask for.
Of ourselves, absolutely.
In
And how
our-
about of others, too?
And our human experience.
Yeah. We're all just trying to be the best that we can be.
Right.
And if that doesn't feel like what you want to be, that's okay. Right? It's okay. You're okay. I'm okay. We're okay.
We're okay.
So that was a week in a nutshell.
There you go. There you go. Just a funny quip at the end. I was talking to my son's father, who we have a long and interesting relationship. Well, long now.
Full of
since-
experiences.
full of experiences going on in 12 years. Anyway, he was talking to me, and it was an interesting conversation. And we were talking about a specific challenge that Nolan was facing. And it's important to me that I co-parent with him regardless of any feelings I have towards him.
Because you're a grown up. Anyway.
I try to be. I try to be sometimes.
Right.
So we were having this conversation, and he came up with ideas, and I shot them down immediately. And he said, "See, your problem is you just don't like me, and you don't like anything I think, and you think I'm always wrong." And I paused, and I'm
Wow.
like, "So, why do you say that? So tell me more about what you're thinking, right?"
Right.
And he's like, "Because the minute I open my mouth, you tell me no." And I said, "Okay, I hear you." So I sat there for a second, and I said, "I'll tell you what, something about me is that if I come forward with an idea, especially about my son, but just about anything else in my life, if I have an idea or I have a concern and you bring things up, there's a 99.8% guarantee I have already thought of what you are saying and come up with an answer with it. And I'm not, it's just,
How you roll.
The diamond changer,
Yeah.
right? I look from every possible angle that I can conceive of. Now that doesn't mean I get everything. And I said, listen, I said, there are times when you come up with an idea that I tell you. I embrace it. I don't always shoot you down. You're like, you're right. I'm like, you're right. I didn't think of that. And so it was an interesting conversation. And he sat there being shocked, looking at me, because I actually acknowledged how he was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And saying, you know what, I hear your point, and it's valid.
Sure.
It's valid. I said, it's nothing personal.
Right.
It's a me thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a me thing. And so it was just interesting, I think, as both of us came to a point of truth
Mm-hmm.
in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure why it was to bring up now, but I
No,
wanted to throw that in.
it raised the vibration of the situation.
Right.
You know.
But it doesn't mean we necessarily, quote unquote, like each other.
Right. Or even came to an agreement
No.
at the end.
No.
It was just that moment of acceptance that, okay,
That
that is your
understanding.
experience.
Right.
And this is, that's huge.
And so we both came to a higher truth,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
We both came to a higher truth in that conversation. And that will only make things better between us as we try to continue to work out our vast differences.
Sure. Like you said, there's bound to be other things that are going to come up. But in that moment, for that situation and that particular concern, there was understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And again, sometimes that can be hard to get, especially in those kinds of relationships.
Right.
So, it's a win.
Yes.
And it's a win for your son.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
And that is, that's the beauty of doing your work.
Right. I agree.
100% right there.
I agree. Making this extremely challenging 12 years, very difficult situation that much easier.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful. So I hope you got something out of this show today that maybe you can look at and compare to your own life experience, and maybe some things that you've been feeling the last week or so, and know that you're not crazy. This is just life showing up, and right now life is showing up really intensely and intently.
right. Yeah, it's not just random intensity that is just going around for no reason. It may feel chaotic.
The chaos is where creation begins.
This is true.
So, until next week, I will put links to everything, the books and the websites and the TikToks and things that we talked about. And you can check us out on our link tree in my experience, and follow us on YouTube and Facebook, our In My Experience podcast community. Am I missing anything? I don't think so. We're just, this. Thank you for listening. Thank you. We'd do it even if you didn't, but I'm grateful that every week when I go in and I see those numbers popping up.
Right.
Because I wonder, is this really just for you and I?
Right.
I mean, I'm okay with that.
And if it is, then it is.
I get to see my best friend like every week. I'm not complaining here.
And we choose to have intentional conversations, which is, hello,
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
Absolutely beautiful.
But I do appreciate the listening.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will be hitting on the archetype of the child soon.
Maybe next week, maybe not. I don't know.
Right.
It's a 4-part series too, so.
Yes. Lots to talk about
Lots
there.
to talk about. So until then, take some time, even if you don't hear this. I don't know, maybe we can get this out by Sunday, but if not, just know that we will put something up on Facebook to let people know that tomorrow is the 8/8
For the
Lions
Lions
Gate
Gate.
and the new moon, and allow yourself to explore where you can harvest or raise your own fields so that you can create some fertile soil or have corn for the cold winter. I don't know.
For those farmers out there.
So I'm Sonya Lee.
And I'm Piperlyne. Thank you, thank you, thank you.